Are you willing to deposit $15,000 just to set foot in the United States? Not to buy a house, not for work, just for a few days of travel. Recently, the US government has just introduced a shocking policy. Tourists from 23 countries, including many major tourism markets, will have to pay this huge margin when applying for a B1/B2 visa. And the result? A series of travel plans have been cancelled, international airlines have cut flights, and the picture of American travel is changing colour more quickly than ever. But the story doesn't stop there. This is not just an entry policy. It is a link in a chain of changes that is quietly impacting the economy, jobs, and the image of America. In this video, you will understand why this $15,000 fee not only discourages visitors, but can also directly affect your own budget, work, and future, whether you are in New York, Toronto, or anywhere in the world. Before we begin, please note, this video is intended for social commentary and analysis, based on publicly available information and a range of academic perspectives. We do not offer conclusions, nor do we support or oppose any organization, policy, or individual. Our goal is to spark reflection and allow each viewer to form their own point of view. Imagine you are preparing for your dream trip to America. Your booked plane tickets, your chosen hotel, your neat schedule every day. Then suddenly an email from the embassy fell into the mailbox. Before being approved, you need to deposit $15,000. Not to buy VIP tickets to watch the Super Bowl or auction an antique Mustang, but just to ask permission to enter the United States for a few weeks. This is a new policy applied since early August 2025, part of the US State Department's campaign to tighten immigration control, targeting 23 countries that they believe have high visa overstay rates. The 12-month pilot program, starting August 20th, applies to B1 visas for business and B2 for travel. In accordance with the provisional regulation published on the 5th of August in the Federal Gazette, the program targets those countries with historically high rates of visa overstay. If the traveler fully complies with the conditions of the deposit, it will be refunded. The figure of $15,000 is not fixed. Depending on the profile, you may be asked for $5,000, $10,000, or a ceiling of $15,000. But even the lowest level is enough to make many close the suitcase before they can open it. If it sounds familiar, you are not mistaken. This idea was proposed in 2020, when the US was looking to tighten entry. But then the COVID-19 pandemic hit, global travel froze, and the policy temporarily slept in drawers. In 2025, it was pulled out, dusted, and reapplied. The only thing is that this time, there are many additional conditions. The visa is only valid for one entry, maximum 90 days of validity, but most can only stay for 30 days. Compulsory entry through 3 designated airports, and even if it is a refund, no one is sure when or if you will get your money back. Many debates have emerged. Some say this is a way to encourage compliance with the law, but for many people, it's like a sign hanging in front of the door. We'll let you in if you prove you have enough money to leave. And that sends a much harder message to swallow than the usual paperwork. The Cato Institute's Director of Immigration Research shared on CBS News and called the bond request draconian. He expressed, "The majority of visa overstays leave after a period of time, or eventually qualify to legalize residency in the US in another way. There is no reason to impose such a draconian regulation." The figure of $15,000 is not fixed. Depending on the profile, you may be asked for $5,000, $10,000, or a ceiling of $15,000. But even the lowest level is enough to make many close the suitcase before they can open it. More importantly, this regulation only applies to some countries that the US rates as having high overstay rates. Zambia, Malawi, some South American and African countries are on the list. Canada is not currently in place, but the message is clear. The list could expand at any time. And yet, the policy comes with many other restrictions. Visa is only one entry. Maximum term is 3 months, but usually only 30 days stay, and you must enter through 3 designated airports. That is, even if you have made a deposit, your trip is still limited as a package travel package, but without a complete section. Meanwhile, on the contrary, the US has just announced a gold card program for the super rich. Invest a large sum, and you will have a quick way into the US, a light procedure, even tax incentives. 2 parallel policies. The only difference is that one for those who can spend heavily, one for the majority who have to overcome the escrow barrier, has created the image of 2 doors. A carpet red door, a steel barrier door. Interestingly, according to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs' own data, this money is only temporary and does not generate long-term profits. If guests leave on time, the government must refund them in full. That is, in addition to detaining tens of millions of dollars from international visitors, the program also creates mountains of refund procedures which are a slow specialty of the administrative apparatus. So, the question is, if the goal is to protect the border, why does it look like it's building more barriers for people who just want to visit, spend money, and leave on time? And can this deposit really stop? Just a few days after information about the $15,000 visa deposit policy appeared, the atmosphere at many US international airports has changed significantly. If in the past, immigration counters during peak season were always crowded with people, now, strange gaps appear between plastic wire fences. There was no more noise from the tourist groups that had just arrived. Instead, there was the sound of suitcase wheels rolling alone, and the sound of speakers calling for the trip rang out in the empty space. The latest numbers from the American Tourism Association have seen spines in the spine. International arrivals to the US decreased by 14% in just 1 year, and that was before the new policy could impact the entire quarter. At the same time, international visitor spending fell by 22.1%, or $12.5 billion, disappearing from the US economy. To imagine, that amount of money could operate more than 200 community hospitals in a year, or pay a full salary of 250,000 hotel employees for 12 months. When you look at these numbers, you might ask, is this a reasonable price for a new policy? The impact is not only reflected in the financial statements, it is being felt day by day in places that depend on the flow of international visitors. In Las Vegas, a Canadian airline cut its direct route from Toronto because of a plunge in demand. For them, it is not worth maintaining a flight path where there are more empty seats than occupied seats. In New York, a hotel that used to be full this summer has only half its capacity, and that's after a steep price cut. The story of a family in Ontario is a testament. For 15 consecutive years, they went to Florida every winter to avoid the sub-zero cold and enjoy the warm beach. This year, when they heard that they had to deposit $15,000 for a B2 visa, they decided to turn to Cancun. They shared half-jokingly, "No deposit required, fast procedures, and they picked me up with a glass of cool water, not a stack of papers." With that decision, thousands of dollars spent, from airline tickets to hotels to shopping, have left the American economic orbit. The irony is, this drop comes amid other destinations racing to roll out the red carpet. Spain simplifies immigration procedures. Thailand launches visa exemption campaign for a series of countries. Japan increases charter flights during the tourist season. Meanwhile, the US seemed to be setting up an additional toll booth right in front of the welcome gate, and it was not surprising that many people chose to turn. The consequences of the chain began to appear clearly. Airlines cut flights, hotels were empty, restaurants, shops, taxis, lost customers, and an entire local community lost its job. With many towns living on tourism, each cancelled flight is not just a line on a deleted map, but also hundreds of unserved meals, hundreds of unserved tip bills. Ask, if the goal is to attract quality customers and reduce violations, is pushing potential customers away, causing the economy to lose more than it protects. And if a policy makes a middle-class Canadian family feel more welcoming on the Mexican coast, what is that saying about America's current appeal? But the decline in tourism is just the surface. Hidden under it is a shaking chain system, from aviation to agriculture, from service to healthcare, all affected by the influx of fewer people. And in the next section, we'll dive into this knock-on effect to see that what's lost is not just airfare or hotel rooms, but the rhythm of life for an entire community. If the decline in US tourism is a strong wind sweeping across the surface, then its knock-on effect is underground waves, quietly but continuously corroding the economic sands of both the US and Canada. Every empty seat on the plane, every hotel room without guests, brings with it a chain of affected links, and this isn't just happening in tourist hotspots. In Orlando, hotel check-in counters, which are crowded in the summer, are now dotted with a few sporadic visitors. Famous amusement parks, once money-printing machines thanks to international visitors, now have to reduce opening hours and rotate some game areas to save operating costs. For employees, this means fewer shifts and thinner tips. In Las Vegas, it's not just casinos and shows that are affected. Restaurants, taxis, souvenir shops all felt a clear decrease in purchasing power. A small restaurant owner on Fremont Street shared that revenue last July decreased by nearly 30% over the same period, although the menu and price remained the same. Cause? Few international visitors mean fewer tables are booked, and domestic visitors also tighten their wallets as the economy shows signs of slowing down. Going further away from the city lights, in coastal towns or rural areas, the impact comes from another direction: a shortage of seasonal workers. Apple farms in Washington state or strawberry farms in California often rely on short-term workers from countries on the bond visa application list. Now, with a $15,000 deposit, many people abandon the idea of going to work, forcing ranchers to cut back on cultivated areas or accept late harvests leading to loss of output. In the rural health sector, the absence of foreign nurses and support staff also leaves a gap. These small hospitals, which relied on the force, now had to manage with extended shifts of existing personnel, increasing the risk of burnout and reducing the quality of service. The question is this an acceptable price when the already stressed system now loses its helping hands? But as for their northern neighbors, the $15,000 fee could also make the door to the US gradually close for them. Canadians are a steady source of customers for American tourist destinations, from weekend shopping trips in Buffalo to long winter vacations in Florida. But now, with visa deposit fees, even short trips become less attractive. Instead of driving across the border to shop in the New York or Vermont outlet, many families choose to buy online from Europe or simply support domestic shopping malls. Data from some border states shows that the number of vehicles registered with Canadian plates through the border gate decreased significantly in August 2025, coinciding with the bond visa policy taking effect. In Florida, where once a large community of Canadian snowbirds came to winter, seasonally rented apartment complexes began to record more available rooms. Some real estate owners were forced to reduce rental prices by up to 20% to attract domestic American visitors, but still could not compensate for the decrease in bookings from Canada. And as customers fewer, local stores that are used to serving Canadians with tailoring products and services are also affected. The numbers will show you this picture more clearly. 14% reduced rate of international visitors to the US in the past year. 22.1% reduced spending by international visitors, equivalent to $12.5 billion US dollars. And thousands of seasonal workers in agriculture and tourism are absent due to visa barriers. These numbers are more than just dry data. They represent thousands of unserved dinners, hundreds of unserved hotel rooms, and a series of electricity and water bills that are late because workers lose their jobs or reduce their income. Imagine the economy as a jazz piece, each instrument as a profession, a community. When international travel is slow, airline drums are less intense. Hotel industry trumpets are weaker, and finally, the music sounds like it lacks vitality. A low passenger plane causes many airlines to cut flights, hotels to lose bookings, restaurants, souvenir shops, taxis to lose customers, and employees to lose working hours, causing community income to decrease, indirectly causing spending in the area. Area continues to decrease. This effect does not stop at one city, but spreads from large cities to small towns, both sides of the border. If Americans feel the streets are emptier and Canadians feel the trip becomes more luxurious, the question is, are we unintentionally building an economic wall between two countries that were once partners tourism and trade closest? This is not just a story of policies and numbers. It is the story of coffee shop mornings where there are no longer long lines of tourists waiting for orders, of hotel nights where there are no more suitcase pulls in the hallways, and of workers who have to go home early because there is no longer enough work to do. We have clearly seen the first waves. But what if the list of countries applying for bond visas continues to expand, and international flights to the US become fewer and fewer? In the next section, we're going to move into a picture of differentiation, two doors for two worlds, and why this could reshape the face of American travel for years to come. Looking at the paperwork, the $15,000 visa deposit is promoted as a tool to ensure if guests comply on time, they will receive the full amount back. It sounds reasonable, but when analyzed carefully, the story shows more flaws than pluses. First of all, because it is a refund, it does not bring in real revenue for the budget. The government only temporarily impounds money, just like a landlord keeps a room deposit, then ideally returns it when the guest checks out as is. But in reality, the refund process is unclear. It can take months or longer, making many people worry that they won't see the money again. The operating costs are not small either. According to the Federal Register, processing documents and making payments through a system like Pay.gov alone costs about $47.60 per person, not including personnel costs, data security, and dispute processing when customers request a refund. In other words, this is a policy that is both expensive and complex, and does not necessarily bring commensurate benefits. The bigger contradiction lies in the message the policy sends. While travel competitors such as Spain, Thailand, and Japan are racing to simplify procedures, waive visas, and expand flights to attract passengers, the US is choosing to add barriers and procedures new. For international visitors, this feeling is like being asked, "Do you have enough money to prove you're not causing trouble?" just before being welcomed. The question is, will this deposit really stop those who intend to violate it? Or will it simply push away guests who were ready to comply in the first place? And as the number of empty seats on the plane increases, hotel rooms are abandoned, who has to pay the final price? In the next section, we will look at the future perspective if this trend continues, a picture that could change the entire face of American tourism for years to come. If today is a $15,000 visa deposit for 23 countries, then next year's scenario could be 50 countries, then more. The list expands not only according to the overstay rate factor, but can also be associated with political, commercial, or diplomatic fluctuations. With each addition, the door to America is slightly narrower. In the short term, the impact will continue to spread. Many airlines may have to cut more international routes because there are more empty seats than occupied seats. This is not only happening in major hubs like New York or Los Angeles, but also at mid-size airports that depend on several international routes to maintain profits. Hotels and resorts will have to adjust their strategy, divert to the domestic market, deepen their prices, or close down their establishments. As for the retail and service industry, from outlet stores in border states to coffee shops in tourist cities, revenue will gradually decrease as international arrivals continue to decline. In the long term, the appearance of US tourism may change in the direction of a more pronounced rich-poor gap. International visitors to the US will be more inclined towards the super-rich group, going on private tours, staying at high-end resorts, shopping for luxury goods. Middle-class family tours, which generate a steady volume of expenditure, evenly distributed in localities, will gradually diminish, leaving a gap which the internal market is difficult to fill. Social consequences are also difficult to avoid. Communities that have lived on international tourism will have to adapt or face economic contraction. A coastal town can lose its crowded high season, replaced by a few luxurious but sparse groups of guests. The bustle disappears, and with it, hundreds of seasonal jobs, stories of cultural exchange, or small business opportunities. The irony is that America, a country once considered an open stage for all classes of tourists, is at risk of becoming a highly selective financial destination. At that time, the question is no longer, what do you want to go to America for? But are you capable of overcoming this barrier? And if this happens, will American dream in the eyes of international tourists still be an open dream, or just a painting hanging behind a thick glass, which you can only see from afar? At the end, we will close this journey with a thoughtful suggestion for each audience member to ask themselves, how is this policy shaping America's future? And is it making us trade more than protect? The story of the $15,000 visa deposit goes beyond entry procedures. It is also a mirror of the choices America is making in its relationship with the world. From empty streets, empty seats on airplanes, to communities that have lost their familiar pace of life, all are slices for us to reflect on. So what do you think? Is this a necessary direction or a step that makes the door too narrow for guests who once loved America? Please share your perspective in the comments section. We would love to hear your own story and experience. Don't forget to tap subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss further analysis of policies and trends that are directly impacting our daily lives. This video content is for informational and analytical purposes only and does not represent any political views or policy recommendations. Thank you for following to the end. See you in the next videos.